The evening settled quietly over the Turner house. Okay. And the soft hum of the heating system was the only sound in the living room. Emma moved slowly, her mind still buzzing from the morning's conversations and the afternoon spent with Michael helping Noah with homework. There was a strange calm now, but it was layered with tension, a mix of hope and fear she couldn't shake. She had spent years building a life without Michael, creating routines, establishing strength for herself and her son. Yet, here he was, moving through the house as if he belonged, yet still fragile and uncertain. Like someone testing the ground before fully stepping back in, dinner had passed with gentle conversation. Michael listened attentively to Noah's stories, shared quiet laughter, and offered encouragement for his schoolwork. Emma noticed how natural he seemed with their son, how Noah relaxed completely in his presence. For the first time in years, she saw a father and son reconnecting, a bond she had thought lost. Yet for Emma, seeing it stirred a storm of emotions she wasn't sure she could manage. After clearing the dishes together, Michael and Emma moved around the kitchen in an unspoken rhythm, hands brushing occasionally, sharing small smiles. It was the kind of domestic intimacy that reminded her of the life they once shared without any dramatic gestures. Just the subtle comfort of presence. She realized she had missed these small moments more than she had wanted to admit. Each glance, each brush of hands, seemed to pull her heart in two directions: the desire to protect herself and the desire to allow something new to grow. Noah had gone to bed early, exhausted from his day and the emotional weight of seeing his father again. Emma had tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and whispered a soft good night. The house was still, the quiet almost sacred, and she felt the need to check on him one last time. It had been her ritual for years, a way to feel connected, to offer love and protection. She walked down the hallway, her steps soft, almost hesitant, and approached his bedroom door. She paused for a moment, her hand on the doorknob. The room glowed faintly from the lamp on Noah's desk. What she saw made her stop in her tracks. Michael was sitting on the edge of Noah's bed, reading quietly. Noah was half asleep, his small hand resting gently on his father's arm. The scene was simple, ordinary, yet it carried a weight that left Emma breathless. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic confessions, just a father and son, reunited in a quiet, tender moment. Emma stood there silently, her heart aching in a way she hadn't felt in years. She watched them, the softness in Michael's voice as he read, the calm breathing of Noah as he drifted towards sleep. The scene was so pure, so ordinary, and yet it carried an extraordinary emotional power. In that instant, Emma realized how much had been missing in all their lives, how much love had gone unspoken, how many small moments they had lost. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of pain. They were tears of relief, of hope, of recognition. She had spent so long building walls around her heart, shielding herself from the past and protecting Noah from disappointment. But now, seeing them together, she understood that some wounds could heal, that some losses could be mended with presence, care, and quiet effort. Michael looked up as Emma stood in the doorway. Their eyes met, and in that single gaze, no words were necessary. She saw the man who had hurt her, yes, but also the man who had returned, who had tried, who had not given up on his family. His eyes held a mixture of regret, hope, and tenderness that mirrored her own emotions. For a moment, the years of pain and distance melted away, leaving only the raw human connection that had once defined them. Emma whispered softly, "Good night," her voice trembling slightly. Michael nodded, returning the soft gesture, his eyes still on her with unspoken understanding. She closed the door gently, leaning against it for a moment, taking in the scene she had just witnessed. It was a sight that changed everything, a reminder of what was lost, what could be regained, and what love could endure when given the chance. After a few quiet minutes, Emma moved to the porch, wrapping herself in a blanket and sitting in the soft evening air. The stars twinkled above, and the faint sound of the wind through the trees carried a sense of peace. She breathed deeply, letting herself feel the emotions she had kept locked away for so long. There was fear of being hurt again, fear of disappointment. But there was also hope. A fragile yet undeniable hope that perhaps the family she had once known could be whole again. In a new way, Emma reflected on the changes she had seen in Michael. He had aged, yes, but he had also grown. The absence, the mistakes, the regrets, all of them had shaped him, had softened him, had taught him lessons she wished she could have shared with him earlier. She realized that people could change, that love could survive absence, and that sometimes the return of someone lost could bring not chaos, but clarity. Her thoughts turned to Noah. She saw how happy he had been today, how his face had lit up at the sight of his father, how his body had relaxed in Michael's presence. Her heart ached for the years lost, but also swelled with gratitude for this chance. She knew that these small moments, the quiet bedtime reading, the gentle attention, the simple shared laughter, were what truly mattered. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic reconciliations. It was about showing up consistently with love and presence. Emma realized that her feelings for Michael were complicated. She felt a pull toward the man she had once loved, a desire to trust him again, and an awareness that her heart had not fully healed from the past. Yet she also understood that love could be patient, that it could rebuild slowly, quietly, without force. She could allow herself to feel, to hope, to consider the possibility of something more, while still protecting herself and Noah as the night deepened. She returned inside, moving through the hallway with a newfound sense of calm. The house felt alive again, filled with the warmth of connection that had been absent for so long. She thought about the future, uncertain, fragile, but full of possibility. She understood that life rarely offered perfect endings, but it often offered second chances in small, meaningful ways. Emma climbed into bed, feeling the weight of the day lift slightly. The image of Michael and Noah lingered in her mind, a quiet reminder that love, effort, and presence could heal even the deepest wounds. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to imagine a future where trust could be rebuilt, where laughter could return, and where the family she had fought so hard to protect could be whole again. Not as it once was, but as something new and beautiful. For the first time in years, Emma felt a sense of peace. She allowed herself to hope, to dream, and to feel the stirrings of a heart ready to embrace possibility. The night outside was still calm and infinite, and she understood that change had already begun. The sight she had witnessed, a father quietly reading to his son, a boy resting in his father's care, and a mother watching from the doorway, had shifted something deep inside her. Emma whispered softly to herself, "Maybe this is the beginning, not the end." And in that quiet moment, under the soft glow of the lamp and the watchful stars, she felt it. The delicate, fragile promise of love returned, a chance to rebuild, and the stirring of a heart open to hope. The storm had passed, leaving only clarity. And for Emma Turner, Michael, and Noah, the journey ahead was no longer about what had been lost, but about what could be found together. Asterisk. The rain had stopped just before sunset, leaving a faint mist across the quiet Oregon neighborhood. The Turner house stood at the end of the street, its lights glowing softly through the windows. Inside, Emma Turner moved through the hallway with slow, tired steps. The day had drained her work, laundry, dinner, and helping her teenage son Noah with his school project. But no matter how busy or tired she was, she never forgot one thing: saying goodnight to him. It was their ritual, something she had done since Noah was a little boy. No matter what happened that day, she would open his door, check on him, and whisper a simple goodnight. It made her feel connected to him, even as he grew more independent. Tonight was no different, or so she thought. Emma walked past the framed family photos on the wall. One showed her, Noah, and her ex-husband, Michael, smiling at a park years ago. She glanced at it for a moment before looking away. That chapter was closed, at least. She believed it was. Michael had left when Noah was just 11, unable to handle the pressures of marriage and fatherhood. The divorce was quiet but painful. He had promised to stay in touch with Noah, but his visits grew fewer until they stopped completely. Emma had learned to build a new normal, just her and her son. As she reached Noah's door, she noticed it was slightly open. A sliver of warm light spilled into the hallway. That was unusual. He usually kept the door closed when studying. Emma smiled faintly, imagining him still awake, maybe watching videos or finishing his essay. She softly pushed the door open, ready to tease him for staying up too late, but the sight before her made her stop. Her heart skipped. For a second, she wondered if she was imagining things. Noah wasn't alone. Sitting on the floor beside him was a man. His hair was slightly grayer, his shoulders broader, but Emma recognized him instantly. Michael, her ex-husband, the man who had disappeared from their lives 3 years ago, was suddenly sitting there, calm and quiet, like he belonged. Emma's breath caught. Her hand, still holding the door, trembled. The room was filled with a strange silence, heavy but fragile, like a glass about to shatter. Noah looked up first. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Mom," he began, but stopped, unsure what to say. Michael turned slowly, meeting her gaze. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if time had folded on itself, the past and present colliding in one painful heartbeat. "Hey, Em," Michael said softly, his voice careful, almost unsure. "I was just saying goodnight to him." Emma blinked, trying to find words. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone calm, but her chest tightening. "I came to see Noah," he said. "I should have called. I just didn't know how." His voice was low, filled with something that sounded like regret. Noah shifted nervously on the bed. "He showed up this evening," he said quickly, his voice breaking the tension. "I thought it was okay." Emma looked at her son, his eyes hopeful, worried, a mix of both. She took a slow breath, forcing herself to stay composed. "It's late," she said softly. "We'll talk about this in the morning." Kyle nodded, standing up. "I understand. I didn't mean to surprise you." He looked older, more worn than she remembered. There were lines on his face that hadn't been there before, and his eyes carried a quiet sadness that spoke louder than words. For a brief second, as he walked past her toward the hallway, their arms brushed. It was such a small touch, but it made her heart stutter. The familiarity of it, the warmth, the memory. It was too much, too soon. When he left, the house felt too quiet. Noah looked down, unsure what to say. "I didn't want to upset you," he said softly. Emma forced a small smile. "It's okay, sweetheart. Go to bed. We'll talk tomorrow." She kissed his forehead and turned off the light. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the rain starting again outside. Her mind wouldn't stop replaying that moment, the way Michael looked at her, the sound of his voice, the shock of seeing him after so long. He had left her broken once. She remembered the day he packed his things, the argument that wasn't really an argument, it's just silence filled with disappointment. He said he needed space, that he wasn't the man she thought he was. And then he was gone. She had spent years rebuilding herself after that, learning to smile again, to live without wondering what went wrong. And now, suddenly, he was back, sitting in her son's room as if no time had passed. Emma got out of bed and walked to the window. The rain tapped softly against the glass. The streetlights outside blurred through the drizzle. Everything looked calm, but her heart wasn't. She thought about Noah, how happy he had looked. Even for a brief moment, to see his father again. That image hurt more than anything. Because no matter what Michael had done, he was still Noah's dad. And deep down, she knew her son had always missed him. Emma sighed and leaned against the window frame, wrapping her arms around herself. Maybe this wasn't about her. Maybe it was about Noah getting something back that he had lost. Still, she couldn't ignore how seeing Michael had stirred something inside her, something she thought she had buried. She remembered how they used to talk late into the night, planning their future, laughing about small things. He was her best friend once. They weren't perfect, but they were real. Then life happened. Long hours, sleepless nights, and a growing distance neither of them knew how to fix. Now, after all this time, he was back. And she didn't know what that meant. Was it an apology? A chance? Or just a ghost from the past walking through her door? Emma finally went back to bed, but she didn't close her eyes. She just lay there, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. feeling both angry and strangely alive. The image of Michael sitting beside Noah, reading softly, replayed in her mind like an old memory brought back to life. She didn't want to admit it, but something about that moment had touched her. The quiet tenderness she hadn't seen in years. The storm outside grew louder, wind whispering against the house, but Emma barely noticed. For the first time in a long while, her heart wasn't numb. It was restless, uncertain, full of questions she didn't know how to answer. By the time the first light of dawn touched the curtains, Emma finally whispered to herself, "What are you doing back, Michael?" The question lingered in the stillness, unanswered, but she knew the real storm hadn't even begun yet. The morning sunlight spilled into the Turner kitchen, casting a warm glow across the wooden table. Emma sat quietly, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, feeling the steam rise and curl into the air. The house was unusually still. Noah had already left for school, and that left only her and Michael, the man who had walked out of her life years ago. Now sitting across from her with the same careful eyes she remembered, he stirred his coffee slowly, watching her as if trying to read her thoughts. "You still drink it black," he said softly, a small smile playing on his lips. It was familiar, the kind of detail only someone who had lived with you for years would remember. Emma didn't answer, her fingers tightening around her mug. She had so many questions, and she didn't know where to start. After all the years, after the quiet healing she thought she'd achieved. Michael's presence brought a rush of emotions she hadn't expected. Anger, hurt, and a surprising wave of longing all collided inside her. She wanted to push him away, to act like nothing had changed. But there he was, human, real, imperfect. And she couldn't ignore that he had been a part of her life for so long. Finally, she spoke. "Why now, Michael?" Her voice was calm but firm. "Why after all this time?" He looked down, fingers wrapped around his mug, eyes tracing the wood grain of the table. "Because I made mistakes," he said quietly. "Because I left when I should have stayed. Because I wasn't brave enough to face life with you and Noah. And because I've missed my family every single day since." Emma felt a pang in her chest. His words carried weight, the kind of truth that leaves you breathless. She remembered the nights when she had cried herself to sleep, wondering if he ever thought of them. The years had been long and quiet, filled with her learning to be strong on her own. And now he was here, admitting what she had longed to hear but never believed she would. "You broke us," she whispered. "You broke me." "I know," he said, his voice low, almost a confession. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve a second chance. But I had to see you, both of you. I had to try." Emma stared at him, seeing the lines of age and regret on his face. He wasn't the young man who had left so abruptly. He was older, tempered by time, softened by life. There was a vulnerability there she hadn't seen in years. A man who had lost his way and was trying to find it again. She felt torn. Part of her wanted to shut the door and pretend none of this had happened. Another part, the part she didn't dare admit, wanted to hold on to the memory of what they had once shared and see if something could be rebuilt. Michael leaned forward slightly. "I know it's late. I shouldn't have just shown up. But I couldn't wait any longer. Noah deserves to know I'm here, that I care. And maybe you deserve to know too." Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady the mix of emotions swirling inside her. She remembered the long nights they had shared, planning for the future, laughing about small things. She remembered his voice, warm and steady, the way he used to make her feel safe. Those memories were bittersweet now, tinged with the pain of loss, but still full of longing. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she said finally. "I don't know if I can believe that things will be different." "I don't expect you to," he replied. "I just want a chance to prove it. That's all." The air between them felt heavy, charged with unspoken words and years of history. Emma looked at him, really looked, and saw not just the man who left, but the man who had loved her, who had been part of their family, who still carried a quiet devotion for them. "I'll let you stay for dinner tonight," she said after a pause, her voice softening. "For Noah." Michael's face brightened slightly, though he tried to hide it. "Thank you," he said. That means more than you know. It was a small step, a cautious bridge between the past and what might come next. Emma told herself it was for Noah, for her son's sake, to let him reconnect with the father he had missed. But deep down, she knew her heart had also responded. The spark she thought was gone flickering to life again. The rest of the morning passed quietly. Michael helped with small chores, setting the table, washing a few dishes. They moved around each other like two dancers relearning steps they had once known by heart. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was tentative, thoughtful, filled with the weight of what had been lost and what might be found. Emma found herself stealing glances at him, noticing the subtle changes, the way his hair had thinned slightly, the careful way he spoke, the way his eyes held a gentle sadness. She felt a strange mixture of emotions, irritation at his past absence, gratitude for his return, and a subtle stirring of feelings she had buried. When it was finally time to prepare dinner, Noah returned from school. His eyes lit up when he saw Michael. The awkward tension of the morning melted slightly, replaced by a cautious excitement. Emma watched them, feeling a complex mix of pride, relief, and anxiety. Seeing them together, she realized how much Noah had missed his father, how much she had missed him, too. Whether she wanted to admit it or not, dinner passed with soft conversation. Michael listened attentively as Noah talked about his day, sharing small details, homework challenges, and upcoming projects. Emma noticed how Michael nodded, asked questions, and offered encouragement. It was normal, yet different. A small glimpse of what life could have been if he had stayed. After dinner, as Emma and Michael cleaned up together, the room was filled with quiet moments, hands brushing over the dishes, shared smiles, and gentle laughter. For the first time in years, she felt a connection forming again. Fragile but undeniable. As the evening wore on and Noah went to bed, Emma felt the weight of what had happened. Seeing Michael back in their home, talking gently to her son, had stirred feelings she hadn't expected. A mix of hope, fear, and longing. She realized that the past couldn't be erased, but maybe, just maybe, the future could be rewritten. Standing in the hallway after turning off Noah's light, she felt a shiver run through her. She opened the door slightly, peeking in to see Michael sitting on the edge of Noah's bed, reading quietly as her son drifted towards sleep. The scene was simple, ordinary, yet it carried a depth that made her heart ache. Her mind raced. What did this mean for her? For Noah? For them? Could the pieces of a broken family ever fit together again? She didn't know the answers yet. But she understood one thing. Nothing would ever be the same after tonight. Emma closed the door softly and leaned against it for a moment, breathing in the quiet, feeling the mix of tension and warmth lingering in the air. The day had begun with uncertainty, but it ended with a fragile, shimmering possibility, a chance to heal, to forgive, to reconnect. As she walked back to her bedroom, she realized that life had a way of surprising you when you least expected it. Sometimes the past comes back not to haunt you, but to remind you that love, no matter how complicated, never truly disappears. And in that moment, Emma allowed herself to hope. Just a little, that maybe, this time, things could be different. The night was coming, and with it, the unknown. But Emma felt a flicker of courage. She had faced pain before. She had survived heartbreak. And now, faced with the possibility of a second chance, she knew she had the strength to face whatever came next. The quiet in the house was gentle now, almost comforting. But in her heart, a storm was quietly forming, one that could change everything. The morning sun spilled through the blinds, casting long lines of light across the Turner kitchen. Emma sat at the table, still in her pajamas, staring into a cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm. She didn't want to admit it, but last night had left her restless. The sight of Michael sitting beside Noah, reading softly, had stirred memories she thought were long buried. She hadn't slept well, tossing and turning as thoughts swirled through her mind. Michael's unexpected return had thrown her carefully built life off balance, and she couldn't ignore the way her heart had responded. Michael entered the kitchen, the scent of coffee lingering around him. He moved quietly, like he didn't want to break the fragile calm. "Morning," he said, his voice low and gentle. It had been years since she had heard him say that with this kind of sincerity. He poured himself a cup, careful not to spill, and took a seat across from her. Emma's eyes met his for a moment, and she saw a shadow of the man she once loved. Not the man who had left, but the one who had returned, carrying regret and hope in equal measure. There was silence for a while, broken only by the soft clinking of the spoons against the mugs. Emma wanted to speak, to ask everything at once, but she didn't know where to start. The questions piled up in her mind. Why now? Why, after all these years? Could she trust him again? Could Noah? Finally, she gathered her courage. "Why now, Michael?" she asked, her voice steady but careful. "Why, after all this time?" He looked down at his hands, taking a slow breath before answering. "Because I made mistakes," he said quietly. "Because I ran when I should have stayed. Because I was afraid of facing life with you and Noah. And because I missed you both every single day." His voice wavered slightly, the kind of vulnerability she hadn't expected. Emma felt a pang in her chest. His words carried honesty, raw and heavy. She remembered the nights she had cried herself to sleep, wondering if he thought of them at all. And now he was here speaking the words she had longed to hear but never thought she would. "You left us," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "You broke our family." "I know," he said softly. "I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't even know if I deserve a second chance. I had to see you, Emma. I had to see Noah. I had to try." Emma studied his face, noticing the lines of age, the quiet sadness, the subtle changes time had brought. He wasn't the same man who had walked away all those years ago. He was older, tempered by regret, softened by time. And in that moment, she saw the man who had loved her, who had been a part of their life, and who was now trying to rebuild something that had been broken. Her mind raced. Part of her wanted to close the door and pretend he hadn't shown up, that nothing had changed. Another part of her, the part she didn't dare admit, wanted to reach out, to feel the warmth and familiarity she once knew. The memories of long conversations, shared dreams, and quiet laughter resurfaced. She remembered how he used to make her feel safe, how they had navigated life together, imperfect but strong. Michael leaned forward slightly, his eyes searching hers. "I know I can't fix the past," he said quietly. "I know I hurt you, and I don't expect everything to go back to the way it was. But I want to try if you'll let me. For Noah and for us." Emma felt a flicker of emotion she hadn't felt in years. Hope, fear, longing, all tangled together, leaving her heart both heavy and light. She had told herself it was for Noah to let him reconnect with his father. But deep down, she knew her heart was also responding. The spark she had thought was gone seemed to flicker again, fragile but real. "I'll let you stay for dinner tonight," she said after a pause, her voice softening. "For Noah." Cole's face brightened, though he tried to hide it. "Thank you," he said simply. "That means more than I can say." The rest of the morning passed quietly. They moved around each other in a dance of tentative familiarity. Michael setting the table, helping with small chores, Emma glancing at him when she thought he wouldn't notice. There were no words about the past, no accusations, just careful, deliberate actions as they reacquainted themselves with one another. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was thoughtful, full of the weight of what had been lost and the hope of what might be found. When Noah returned from school, his eyes lit up at the sight of Michael. The tension in the house eased slightly as he bounded into the kitchen, eager to share his day. Michael listened intently, asking questions, offering encouragement. Emma watched them, a complex mix of pride, relief, and anxiety filling her chest. Seeing Noah, happy to have his father back, stirred emotions she hadn't expected. Dinner passed with soft conversation and gentle laughter. Michael didn't dominate the table. He simply joined it, allowing Noah to lead the stories while he listened and supported. Emma felt the warmth of family in a way she hadn't felt for years. There was no grand declaration, no dramatic confrontation, just quiet reconnection, ordinary and deeply emotional. After clearing the table, they found themselves alone in the kitchen again, working side by side. Their hands brushed occasionally, and they shared small smiles and quiet laughter. Emma felt a strange mixture of familiarity and distance. The man she once knew was still there, but he was tempered by experience, softened by regret. And she realized she still cared in a way that scared her, because she didn't want to be hurt again. When the night finally fell and Noah went to bed, the house was quiet. Emma walked down the hallway, opening Noah's door slightly to peek in. Michael was sitting on the edge of the bed reading quietly as Noah drifted toward sleep. The scene was simple, ordinary, yet it carried a depth that made her chest ache. It was the first time in years she had seen them together like this, unbroken and connected. Her mind raced with questions. Could they rebuild trust? Could she open her heart again without being hurt? Could Noah forgive the years lost and embrace the father who had returned? She didn't know the answers, but she realized one thing. Life had given them a chance, a fragile opportunity to heal. Emma closed the door softly and leaned against it for a moment, breathing in the quiet. The day had begun with uncertainty, with a flood of emotions she hadn't expected. It ended with a fragile hope, a possibility that perhaps the past could be reconciled, that love could be rediscovered. She walked back to her bedroom, feeling the weight of the day, but also a spark of courage. She had faced heartbreak before, survived betrayal, and found strength in herself. Now she had a chance to navigate a new chapter, one where forgiveness, understanding, and even love could find a place again. The night was quiet, but Emma felt a storm inside her, a mix of fear and hope, of longing and caution. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. As she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she whispered to herself, maybe this is the beginning, not the end. And for the first time in a long while, she felt the stirrings of possibility, a gentle promise that life had more in store than she had ever imagined. The long-awaited talk had begun, but the journey was far from over. And Emma knew that whatever happened next, she was ready to face it with her son, with Michael. And with the fragile hope of a heart willing to believe in second chances. Asterisk.